So you're probably wondering, how does the pen tool work in Affinity Designer? Is it like Adobe Illustrator? It's very, very close. I actually think it's a better tool here. It is also still called the pen tool in Affinity Designer as well. So I'm just kind of creating some shapes. And it's just like Adobe Illustrator, where you can kind of click, make a, I'm going to say an anchor point, but it's actually a node, and create another node, and you can easily bend and change the shapes and create all sorts of stuff. So let's say we want to create a circle out of this just to kind of practice using the pen tool. We can go ahead and create our, it works just like Adobe Illustrator, very, very similar. There's a couple things that are different. You kind of have different modes here. So right now it's the pen mode. You can actually do a polygon mode. So if you want to click and not make curves, you can make geometric shapes or more harsh edges using that mode. So I'm going to go back to my pen tool, and you can just go up here to your mode and you can toggle different ways. The pen mode is probably the one you're used to seeing in Adobe Illustrator, and the polygon mode is if you don't want to kind of click and drag to create those bends and curves. So let's create a little shape so we can practice with the pen tool, kind of see the differences here. So I'm just going to make a simple coffee cup. We click and drag to create the bottom part. Click and drag. So let's say I want to manipulate these little anchor points. So we would need the direct selection tool like we do in Adobe Illustrator, but we have something a little bit different, but it's pretty much acts the same. It's the node tool. So it's right here is how you're going to be able to manipulate the particular anchor points and drag them down. So let's say I want to create a nice curve here, kind of like the curvature tool does in Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to click and it's going to be able to create specific bends for me. And I can change these points at any time up here to convert. So this will convert specific nodes into sharp points or rounded points or smooth points. So let's say I want that to be a sharp point, so kind of like the double clicking on it using the curvature tool in Adobe Illustrator. So I'm just going to click up here, it's going to convert it to a sharp edge, or you can toggle it to a rounded edge. So let's go ahead and make this a stroke. And I can always go to my stroke panel and edit the thickness and add rounded corners. Of course, you have the corner tool. They can add corners to particular edges to make them softer. And then we flip back to that node tool to edit further any kind of anchor point locations, or in this case, nodes. Let's go ahead and add an ellipse tool or a circle here onto the coffee cup. We can go to that node tool to be able to match the curve here. You take that corner tool, drag it up to reduce those corners so I can match that ellipse tool. So let's draw a little shading. So I just have my pen tool, I click and hold to create a curve, and I'm going to flip this to a fill. So I'm going to go to my color, flip that to a fill. We're just adding a little color here. And let's change that so it's a little bit of a lighter color. And I'm going to send this layer. So the layering system works very similar to Adobe products. You could actually do the same keyboard shortcut to send layers on top and below. So we want to send that shadow to the back behind the stroke. So I'm going to hold Command and do my left bracket. And you could do your Command and hold your right bracket to bring it back up in the layering system. So you could bring it back and forth just like you would in Adobe Illustrator. There's a lot of the shortcuts are the same. If you wanted to group elements, I can go ahead and select all, right click and group, and now I have my whole element grouped together. So that's very, very similar to Adobe Illustrator as well. Let's say I want to create a little handle. So I'm going to go ahead and use one of these pre-built tools because they're just so much more powerful and easy to create shapes. So why don't we just get the donut tool? Let's go ahead and make this a similar color. So I'm going to take that eyedropper tool and sample the color. I'm going to double click the shape. I'm going to get those orange nodes. That's going to give me the ability to change the stroke thickness. And I can also change how it goes around the entire circle. So now we have our little coffee cup handle just like that. By using those default shapes, I can go ahead and thicken it up to match the thickness of the cup. So there's our quick little coffee cup. Nothing too exciting, but just using some of Affinity Designer's pen tools and node tools to kind of do what we would do in Adobe Illustrator. Same kind of method. There's lots of different other names for tools. So let's say I want to add a gradient. So let's go ahead and get rid of our little coffee cup here. Let's slide him over there. Let's go ahead and do a donut. And let's create a gradient. So the gradient tool is going to be right up here. It's going to be called the fill tool instead. And we're just going to click and drag. It's going to go ahead and add a gradient for us. We can click on these little areas right here to change the color of our gradient. Just like that. And we can go ahead and manipulate where that gradient follows. And we could drag this little bar on the inside to go ahead and make it a slower transition or a tighter transition between the two colors by manipulating the orange nodes. I can round those corners again by using that corner tool. So all sorts of things you can do here.